The Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch, Part 2. So, Mrs. Grinling had just concocted a delicious lunch for her husband, and she put the lunch in the basket as usual and she sent it down the wire. But the lunch did not arrive. It was spotted by 3 scavenging seagulls who set upon it and devoured it with great gusto. "Clear off, you varmints!" shouted Mr. Grinling, but the seagulls took not the slightest notice. "This is an excellent peach surprise, boys. She's a good cook, Fred. Scrumptious lunch, Tom." That evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling decided on a plan to baffle the seagulls. "Tomorrow I shall tie the napkin to the basket," said Mrs. Grinling. "Of course, my dear," agreed Mr. Grinling. "A sound plan." "They'll have to try harder than that to stop us, Bert." On Tuesday evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling racked their brains for another plan. "They are a brazen lot, those seagulls," said Mrs. Grinling. "Brazen indeed," said Mr. Grinling. "What shall we do?" "Well, our cat does not appear to like the seagulls," said Mrs. Grinling. "No, my dear," said Mr. Grinling. "Hamish is an accomplished seagull chaser." "Of course," exclaimed Mrs. Grinling. "Tomorrow Hamish can guard the lunch." "A most ingenious plan," agreed Mr. Grinling. Hamish did not think that this plan was ingenious at all. He spat and hissed as Mrs. Grinling secured him to the basket. There, Hamish," said Mrs. Grinling consolingly. "I'll have a tasty piece of herring waiting for you when you arrive home." Sadly, Flying did not agree with Hamish. His fur stood on end when the basket swayed, his whiskers drooped when he peered down at the wet blue sea, and he felt much too sick even to notice the seagulls, let alone scare them away from the lunch. "Pretty pussy like a piece of lobster, Mornay. This food gets better every day, Fred. Aren't you going to chase us, pussy?" "Lack-a-day, lack-a-day," said Mr. Grinling sadly. "Meow, meow," agreed Hamish pitifully. On Wednesday evening, Mr. and Mrs. Grinling racked their brain again for a new plan. "What shall we do?" said Mr. Grinling. Mrs. Grinling looked thoughtful. "I have it!" she exclaimed. "Just the mixture for hungry seagulls." "Indeed, my dear," said Mr. Grinling. "What have you in mind?" "Wait and see," said Mrs. Grinling. "Just wait and see."